Welcome back, ladies and gents. Sit back, relax. I've got an epic EV road trip for you. A 1,000-mile round trip from where my wife and I live at RAF Shawbury in Shropshire all the way to the centre of Amsterdam in a weekend. So were there any range anxieties? Were there any big queues for chargers? Were the Tesla Superchargers performing as well as everyone think they do? And would I have done this trip in anything other than a Tesla? Okay, so the evening of day one, Thursday night, all four of us, we packed up the Tesla, we all jumped in, keeping in mind, without getting a punch in the face from the wife or one of her best mates, Amanda, I reckon there's about 350 kilos of extra passenger weight. There was myself, another chap, and the two ladies. The car was completely full, and I was even using the fruit for the first time. So when we left on that Thursday, most people would say, well, what did you charge the car up to? Did you put it up to 100%? Well, no. I have that much confidence in the Tesla charging network that I knew my first stop, I knew the car was going to select Banbury on the M40, which I quite enjoy, and it's only just over 100 miles away. So even with 80%, I'm still getting over 200 miles comfortably. So I didn't even bother. I literally just set off. I think we had about 80% charge, and I knew that we'd get there. And also, I'd almost sometimes rather turn up with 20% state of charge rather than 50%, because the charge actually is so fast to begin with. And also it actually gives me a little bit more time to eat the food, because I knew we were going to be stopping there for dinner on the Thursday evening. And driving from my place all the way down to Folkstone, so in the southeast corner of the country, was going to involve the entirety of the M54, a little bit of the M6 onto the M5, which is a nightmare of a junction. Anyone local knows that. Then we were going to do pretty much the whole of the M40 and then nearly half of the M25 going anti-clockwise from where the M40 is. You have to go past the Heathrow junction, past the M4, past the M3, and then you get off down in the southeast, and then pretty much the whole of the M20. And this was just to get to the southeast of the UK. We were positioning late on the Thursday because we had an early Eurotunnel train on the Friday morning. As we begin, what meets us on the M54 straight away? Glorious traffic due to a damaged central barrier. No one's fault, it has to be repaired. The M6 is always a disaster from where we join at the M54 to getting off at the M5. So our first stop is at Banbury services, as I said. I really like these services, nice and quick. They're the later version chargers, version 3s, I think, with 250 kilowatts. So this was the first stop on the trip. Plug her in, not to go over 80% because of the new congestion charges. So the race is on. KFC is just around the corner. Order the food, quick wee, obviously wash the hands, eat the food, get back to the car before it hits 80% to incur any fees. People that don't drive EVs always think EV owners are sitting around for ages and ages waiting for their car to drive. It is really not the case, especially with Teslas and the newer superchargers. I have to leave the group almost every time on this trip when we're eating or relaxing to go and unplug the car quickly before I get penalised for hitting 80%. Because of course, if you hit 80% and stay there and don't go any more, then you get charged £1 per minute, which is good because you don't want people hogging the chargers. So we leave Banbury, we're on our way down to the M25, and the next shop, which we were thinking the car was predicting Sevenoaks. So a spot of karaoke maybe, and a little bit of Baby Shark to keep us all entertained for a few minutes before the next inevitable traffic jam hits us. So while we were on our way down, I'm obviously saying that, well, I haven't been in an actual proper traffic jam where you come to a complete halt for quite some time in many years. So I didn't touch any wood, whammy, there you go. So we are now in traffic properly for a while. We don't move from here for about 10-15 minutes. By the time we actually get through, what do we see? A brand new Tesla on a 25 plate. It's been rear-ended. Almost time to cry. Right, on we go to the M25. Before we hit the M25, one of the ladies needed a wee. The car doesn't need any charge. There's no drama with this. There's not actually any Tesla Superchargers at Beaconsfield services, so we just pull over quickly. It is a huge services. On a Thursday evening, it was humming. Crazy busy. As soon as we get to the M25, of course it doesn't disappoint. Anti-clockwise, whammy, have some more traffic. It's getting past Heathrow and past the M4 junctions. We're travelling anti-clockwise round. When you get right around the south of London, the quality of the road is awful. It's like a dudung 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 for, it must have felt like half an hour or something, 20-30 minutes. It was terrible. The second stop for charging is Sevenoaks. On the map, it didn't look like it was too far away, but I wouldn't stop here again in the future if it was up to me. And even if the Tesla recommends it in the future, I'll try and get it to go somewhere else. It was a little bit too far away, a bit of a pain to get to. However, if you do use this charger at Sevenoaks, remember to register the car in the hotel, otherwise you might get a fine through the cameras. There are a lot of these ones. If the chargers are linked to hotels or Premier Inns, you do need to go in, and it's all free. Just register your number plate for free parking while you're charging. So we set off again at Sevenoaks and we arrive at the Premier Inn. So we're quite late on the Thursday evening. We're planning on leaving nice and early. There's no charging here, and I actually checked at the reception that there's plenty of CCTV around the parking lot, because then I can turn Sentry mode off and save a little bit of battery through the night, since this is about a kind of efficiency run. Okay, welcome to day 2. So this is the Friday now, the Eurotunnel, nice and early. We're booked in at 7:45 in the morning. You have to arrive. Check-in supposedly closes an hour before your departure time. However, as we find on the way back, that's not quite true, because we were cutting it a little bit fine, maybe even a little bit late. So the train departs at 7:45 in the morning. I'm predicting we're going to get to Amsterdam at about 2 p.m. This is with lunch stop and some leg stretches. To be honest now, I'm not even calling it charging stops, because one of us always needs a wee or a leg stretch before the car actually ever needs any electric. And every time we stop, the car is ready to go well before we ever are. So we arrive at the Eurotunnel. The process is brilliant, really, really fluid. You have to go through 2 kind of custom checkpoints. You go through the British one first and then the French one, and then vice versa when you're coming back. As I said, the check-in does close an hour before, so we were planning on getting there 90 minutes before, just for a bit of leeway and not having used it in a while, just to find our way around. However, when we actually came to check in, even though I had one of the basic tickets, which only applied for that one time, it actually offered us, do we want to get on the train before half an hour earlier? Which is fantastic. So yeah, why wouldn't you take that up? Even with being offered the earlier train, we still had around 15 minutes to chill, have a quick toilet break, and actually plug the car in just to get a small amount of charge. So when we set off on the other side, the car wanted to get to Bruges first, and then another stop before Amsterdam. So I was trying to help it out with giving it a little bit more charge. Okay, so boarding onto the Eurotunnel, for some reason being an EV, it can't be the size of the Tesla itself. The Eurotunnel classified it as large. So instead of being on the double deckers, we were actually in a single line with quite a few other EVs and then some of the vans and things. Once the train starts moving, you're allowed to get out, stretch your legs. There are toilets right down at the front. I'm not sure if they're at the back as well, but there were definitely 3 cubicles down at the front. More entertainment after a quick wee break. Tesla games are brilliant. Rich and I were having a little race against each other on the screen, and he was annoyingly good actually, considering I don't think he's played the game before. Disembarking, we got off the train, you go up a slip road and you're almost kicked straight out. It is brilliant. There's no more customs on the other side. You literally get booted straight out and you can just crack on. So this is why I kind of wanted to get a little bit of top up of electric back at Folkstone. You'll see here, we try to find, you go into the display settings in the Tesla and you can switch to kilometers rather than miles an hour. And the second we flicked across, I needed to slow down just a tiny bit. And also a message came up on the car immediately. I didn't have to do anything. And it said that the headlights have been configured for right-hand driving. So it did that automatically. The car knew where we were and it did it straight away. A nice little touch. You'll see on the sat nav here down the bottom that the car wanted to go to Bruges for supercharging, and then Meerkerk is it, I think, afterwards before Amsterdam. However, we were obviously driving so well, and maybe that little top up of Folkstone, it automatically changed to Lokeren. It's another 250 kilowatt supercharger. However, it knew we were going to get there comfortably and we didn't need the Bruges stop. So the car automatically actually just altered it without asking me. So the whole AI thing, but it's good. It delayed the stop. We didn't need to stop and we can just crack on to Lokeren. We arrive at Lokeren. This is so now the first charge in Europe. There wasn't much here, just quite a fancy hotel and a bar. I did plug her in as usual. On the app though, when you plug your car in, obviously when you first plug it in, you want to see the flashing light go green and then you know it's charging. However, on this one, I always check my Tesla app as well because it tells me if there's any faults with the chargers. And this one actually there was. The charger was limiting its speed and the app was telling me that. So I came back out and I switched it to a different one and then it just carried on as normal. There was hardly any cars here, so no waiting at all. So a nice little touch. So I recommend always checking your Tesla app when after you've plugged it in and you've walked away, just to make sure everything's fine. So the first of many EU tunnels. I thought this looked a little bit like Optimus Prime, which was pretty cool. Close to Meerkerk now, we have entered Holland, lovely jubbly, and we see our first Amsterdam sign. As you can see here, there's a busy junction up ahead to go to the right, which caught a lot of people out, including myself, and you can actually see that there was a car at the front that nearly went into the back of a truck. You can watch that again if you missed it. It was actually very close. We arrive at Meerkerk. It is lunchtime and there is no more reliable place than the Golden Arches. So McDonald's it is. It's always a bit of a treat to go to a McDonald's in a different country and see what's on the menu. But because we were eating, the charging race was on again. Plug the car in, quick wee, or well, order the food, quick wee, wash your hands, and then smash the McDonald's. And once again, after eating my Biscoff McFlurry, which was amazing, I had to actually go back to the car quicker than the rest of them to unplug the car because it was already about to hit 80% and I was going to start incurring those extra charges. So again, the car is ready faster than we were. So there's no waiting around. It's brilliant. You can see here now on the approach to Amsterdam itself, the road becomes huge. It's a really nice road and we actually get to see our first proper windmill looking very characteristic. Lovely jubbly. Arriving in Amsterdam. So this is where maybe another hint, the Tesla sat-nav. I know they've just introduced a 3D model, but it's more just 3D on buildings. I think it actually needs to have some kind of acknowledgement of it that's being 3D. It's hard to put it into words because when we arrived, the car park was underground, but the ground floor of that, where the road was underneath a flyover or underneath kind of like a dual carriageway. So there was 2 levels here and then the car park was even lower. So the sat-nav was saying go here, but it was also kind of parallel to the top one. So the sat-nav actually routed us to the freeway, whereas we needed to be off the freeway on an underneath road. So that kind of awareness might be tricky to program. It only took 5 seconds to solve. We knew what was going on. But yeah, the sat-nav did take us to a slightly wrong place. Here we are then, we're parked up. So this is exactly halfway. It was just over 500 miles and the car's looking gorgeous underground. I now check again that there's CCTV everywhere, so I turn Sentry mode off, make sure my cabin overheat protection is also off, and then the car goes to sleep, cute little thing, and it has a nice nap until Sunday when it's needed to go. And we actually find out that on Sunday when we leave, not a single % of battery had depleted because it was asleep. Awesome feature. So that's the end of day 2. Day 3, no driving. We're in Amsterdam. I'm in the military, no indulging. Others might have. I won't go into that. Okay, day 4, welcome to Sunday. I told you this was a quick blast into Europe and back. So this is the plan for Sunday. So as soon as we wake up, we're going to kind of hit the road because ideally we want to get into Bruges for lunch and to buy loads of Belgian chocolates and waffles and things like that. Awesome. The car recognises straight away that the road that we took to get to Amsterdam is closed. So it routes us via Rotterdam, the kind of the Hague area. And it thinks we're going to charge at Ridderik. Remember, the train to get back is at 16:55. And I keep saying remember because I completely forgot on the trip. I'm thinking 16:55. Okay, well, we'll get there half an hour before. It's no problem. If a bus was turning up at 16:55 or a normal train, half an hour before is plenty of time. So we'll crack on. We need to be at the Eurotunnel for just after 1600, 1620, something like that. That's half an hour time. No problem at all. However, remember earlier in the video I said you need check-in closes an hour before the departure of your train. And we'd all kind of just slipped our mind of this, I think because we wanted to eat so many Belgian chocolates in Bruges. And this time on the way back, there's no time for sleeping. We're going to get the tunnel straight back across to Folkstone, and then we're going to drive straight back up. I'm kind of hoping, I don't want to stop at Sevenoaks again, and there aren't too many superchargers around the southeast. So even if the car doesn't want to, I will tell it to stop at Folkstone when we get to the other side, and I'll charge it all the way up to 80%. And then my plan is hopefully then it'll get me to Banbury again, which we can stop for some Pizza Hut this time. And then we'll be getting all the way home. So it'll only be 2 stops all the way back. We're going to get back to the UK about 4:30. Surely the traffic's going to be fine. How wrong you are. No matter what time of day you're trying to travel around the UK, the traffic is nuts. So we can look forward to that again. Okay, so we leave the hotel. I finally figure out how to pay for the parking and we are out of there. As I said, the car had slept, so not a single % of battery had been lost. Absolutely brilliant. Just make sure you've got Sentry turned off and the cabin overheats, the cabin protection. Otherwise, you're giving it authority to turn on and off whenever it likes, depending on how cold and warm it gets. Being honest now, the car had been underground for a couple of days. The sat-nav took quite some time to try and figure out where we were, so I wasn't very happy with it. When we driven, and I wanted the car to be doing this trip, I didn't want to have to use Google Maps myself. So when we got outside, I drove for about 200 meters and it still thought we were underground. So I actually did a full reset, holding the two scrolly wheels in for about 5 seconds. Everything went black, everything rebooted about 2 minutes later, and then we were on our way. The sat-nav was perfect, and then it picked us back up where we were. We were back on the road to Rotterdam. It was the same road as coming in, so it's a really nice, huge open road, loads of windmills, loads of nice scenery, and not much traffic. Even though we're leaving the Netherlands' capital, there is hardly any traffic around. Imagine this in the UK. Next up, so there was a sight that we could not avoid. There was a cyclist. Everyone loves cyclists in Lycra, and he might have been sweaty in a certain place, so try and spot that on the camera. I wouldn't take too long over it though, especially if you're having your lunch or your dinner. Here is we were quite astounded by some of the bridges and the architecture. They're very open and nice countries to look at, but the architecture and some of the bridges, oh my God, they were just like pure concrete. We arrive in Ridderik for our charging stop. Again, it's a very fancy hotel with some gorgeous hot chocolate with slag. But don't worry, that's not something from the red light district in Amsterdam. Slag is the Dutch for whipped cream, I think it was. So slag was had quite a few times. So the car knows the plan. We're finished charging at Ridderik and it says you have more than enough now to get to Bruges. That's the next charging stop. So we set off for Bruges for lunch, chocolates. The city centre, if you've ever been there, is gorgeous. The Christmas markets were set up. The architecture is phenomenal. But we only spent about 45 minutes in there, which thankfully we didn't do any more than that because with our little underestimate of what time we needed to arrive at the tunnel, we would have really been in trouble. Anyway, back on the road, and now we're aiming towards the Bruges Supercharger, which were just to the southwest of the city. So we get to Bruges and it's full of UK number plates, so people obviously got the same idea, have a good top up there before they go and use the Eurotunnel. A piece of advice now after doing this, because it's the first time I've ever had to queue for about 10 minutes or so to get a charger, is if you have enough charge to get to the Eurotunnel, and then there's chargers there, do that. Or if you have a charger pre-Bruges, do that and try and skip Bruges because it was very, very busy. However, there is a moment which I'm very happy about but slightly embarrassed that we did stop at Bruges, because as soon as we joined the queue, the chap that was at the front of the queue in his brand new gorgeous looking red Tesla Model Y Juniper jumped out of his car, was walking over to my driver's side window, and the wife actually asked, "Do you know him?" And he had a big smile on his face, and I was like, "No, I have no idea who he is." And he tapped on the window and said, "It's Chris Hannibal." And I couldn't believe it. It sounds ridiculous. It was my first person that actually said hello. But anyway, we'll move on. It did make my day, but enough of that. That was ridiculous. Finally get the charge at Bruges after about 10 minutes of queuing. We're charging for about 5 minutes and Rich and I start playing the games again. And all of a sudden it dawns on me. I'm checking the departure time of our train just to make sure it's all okay. And then all of a sudden it dawns on me that, hang on, check-in closes 60 minutes before. And the car is now predicting we're going to get to the Eurotunnel half an hour after check-in closed, supposedly. So slight panic stations. We had more than enough charge anyway. It wasn't anywhere near depleted. So stop the charging, unlatch it and get on the road as fast as possible. In our kind of hurry to get back to the Eurotunnel, obviously staying within all the legal speed limits, we bump into an M3 competition, and he must have been with the XM, a very rare, huge BM. I don't think this one had the larger engine in it, but the larger engine of this is, I think, the most powerful BMW on the road or when it was built. A couple of gorgeous cars drifted along. We kind of went along in convoy pretty much all the way from Bruges to the Eurotunnel, which certainly passed the time. Somehow we made it. So don't ask me how, but I think somehow we made up about half an hour of time of the predicted arrival there. We were still arriving when check-in was actually closed. We were a couple of minutes afterwards, but there was no problems, no moaning. When you automatically check in, you click the time of the train that you're after. And in this situation, it was the one that we were going to get on. We had the cheapest tickets. I'm not sure how it works if we were to get there any later than that. I imagine I might have been forking out to have to get home again, which would have been quite expensive. So don't forget that check-in closes an hour before your departure time. So this time, because we turned up so on time effectively. There was almost no wait again, so it did work in our favour. There was no time to get any extra charge, but I didn't mind that. I had about 20% I think when we got to the tunnel, and I was going to charge up at Folkstone a lot anyway just to make sure we could get to Banbury. So the loading this time, there was only about 2-3 minutes wait, and ironically we were actually behind the M3 again in the queue for the tunnel. Loading again was as clean and as easy as it was on the way over, and then we had 35-minute duration of trip as it always is, and then the unloading again was really smooth. And it was strange actually after a couple of days of concentrating on driving on the right side of the road, or the wrong side of the road as such, and now to get your mind back into the other side. It was a bit weird. When you actually leave in the UK, it's actually still calibrated for the wrong side of the road, because the first services, the first petrol stop is actually on the side of the road that it would be in France. So don't let that catch you out. It might sound weird, but you'll see what I mean when you get there. We get to the Folkstone chargers. They're the brand new version 4s, looking absolutely gorgeous. The car looks gorgeous sat there, and the de-steaming then on the car worked amazingly. The thing is with Tesla, it's a tech company, so every piece of tech, I know you might find this a bit noddy, but it works, and it works really, really well. This next stint of the trip was actually quite a long one. We're actually going to be driving for about 3 hours straight. So if you have any combustion engine, you're going to want to brake at about 3 hours at the most. You're going to have a numb bum, need a wee, or some food or something. So from the Folkstone Superchargers to Banbury, it was just under 3 hours. So I did drive quite conservatively to start off with. But then I realised actually I was driving at the speed limit, and it's quite good to look at the percentage you're going to have left when you arrive. And if you just hold a speed for a while, and you'll see if the car kind of recalibrates it. So as long as that number isn't going down, you know you're going to be perfectly fine, and you can maybe push it a tiny bit more. And then if the number starts trickling, you can just back off a little bit, and then it'll kind of steady itself, and you know you're going to get to your destination. But talking like that, there's no range anxiety. That word is horrible, especially for any kind of Tesla owner. There's no reason to ever have range anxiety. If you're going to run out of range, it's like having a combustion engine car. If the car says you've got 60 miles left and you're going to somewhere 100 miles away, well, you're going to stop and fill up. You're not just going to keep going until you run out and then panic when it hits zero. You're going to stop and fill up with fuel. And it's exactly the same with the Teslas. And because the supercharger network is so good, there's no such thing as range anxiety. It's an absolute scaremongering piece of rubbish. So as I said, M25 quiet on a Sunday evening, because it took about an hour and a half to get from Folkestone to the M25, maybe an hour. Is it quiet on a Sunday evening? Nope. Whammy, straight into traffic. How about then we were further around the M25, and we're going clockwise now, we're to the west of it. We're trying to get past the M4 junction, whammy, more traffic, and the M25 Heathrow junction, whammy, more traffic. It is ridiculous. The M25 at any point on the day or the week is insane. As soon as we clear all that though and get onto the M40, it really disperses and it opens up and it's nice. Okay, so our final charging stop of this 1,000-mile epic EV trip is back at Banbury. The one I prefer. I do enjoy it there for some unknown reason, I don't know. But Banbury, after nearly 3 hours straight drive, I think we arrived with about 8% of battery left, 9%. So it had a good bit of charge to get up to her, to be able to get us home. The thing is, I think to get home, all it needs is about 50%, 55%, something like that. We went into Pizza Hut, and by the time the pizzas had arrived, the car already had enough charge in it to get us home. So I let it carry on a tiny bit more, but then there's no point wasting money and letting it charge to say 80%. I stopped it at about 60%, actually moved the car before our pizzas had even arrived, and then it just sat there happy, and then we ate and we got back. Because of course you want to get home with, not with 0% left and damage the batteries, but you want to get home rather than charge more, because it's a hell of a lot cheaper. So as I said, after leaving the M25, the rest of the journey was a delight. The M40 was absolutely fine. Joining the M5 and then going north up to the M6 was even fine. And then the M54 all the way home was absolutely fine. It is just that kind of London area, which is an absolute disaster. And we are complete. So remember, everyone is scaremongering, range anxiety, queues forever. There was one small queue at Bruges, but it was full of UK number plates all doing the same thing. So if I could again now, I know that, so I try and avoid Bruges Tesla Superchargers if I can. However, everywhere else, as you've seen from the footage, there was almost no cars there. It was bliss. So the final stats, we covered 1,017 miles, as you can see on the screen. That used 327.5 kilowatts of energy. If we divide the 327.5 into the 1,017, you see we get 3.1 miles per kilowatt hour. Now, considering the car was completely full, We're driving at the speed limits all the time. And I've got a little niggling weird thing in my head that those rim protectors that I've added have made the car less efficient. We're not even, I'm not getting the same efficiency results with those on, but still to get higher than 3 is phenomenal in the winter and driving it however we want it. There are not many other cars out there that are doing that. A full car, a full performance, insane. So I haven't mentioned any prices of charging yet. I have had someone, thank you very much, use my referral code. So I had been granted 650 free Supercharger miles. So they all got swallowed up. So in the end, we went obviously halves on the electric cost of the small amount that was there. And of course, the parking over in Netherlands, sorry, was £30 per day. So they were the small charges, so not too much at all. In summary, it was an absolute dream of a journey considering all the scaremongering that comes with EVs, or the media with EVs, or the non-EV drivers, or the people that just don't like them. Then again, it was done in a Tesla, and of course the Tesla Supercharger network is absolutely phenomenal. It just works, it's brilliant. I haven't actually spoken about autopilot either. I did use autopilot a lot if I knew I wasn't having to change lanes, or if the roads were quite open, then it's really good on my system. I know the newer ones don't have the double click option. I only have basic autopilot, but the double click option allows me to, when I indicate, the auto steer disengages, but the active cruise control, the adaptive cruise control still carries on, so it still maintains the speed. And then I just have to re-engage when I get into the new lane. So the double click works really well. I know the new cars don't have that. I just pray that Tesla adds it again, because it is something that needs to exist. Otherwise, if you have the basic package, it's really not very good. And on that note, I know I did a previous video where I did hammer autopilot in the UK. However, now I've used it on the roads that it's designed for, the system is actually very, very good. So with the longer trips into Europe, if you have enhanced autopilot, that would actually be quite a treat, and the car would just pretty much do it all for you. And there we have it, guys. There was a 1,000-mile round trip in the Tesla to Amsterdam and back in 3 days. I would happily do it again. No problems at all, and I implore anyone else to take their Tesla or any EV, try it and let me know how it goes with the charging networks that you would have to rely on, and paying a hell of a lot more of an expensive tariff rate. But yeah, go for it. Anyway, click up here. YouTube thinks you're going to watch this little video, or my lovely face over here, potentially to subscribe to the channel. Right, if you're still here now, thanks for watching. See you at the next one.